passive solar home from the ground up. No crew, no shortcuts, just us. It's been 8 months of long days, sore backs, and pure determination. Through the highs and lows, the sweat, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs, we've kept moving forward one day at a time, building the life we always dreamed of. Ashlyn and I wanted peace and quiet, a place where we could slow down, breathe, and build something that was truly ours. When we found this spot half a mile back, it just felt right. You could hear the wind through the trees, the birds in the distance, and nothing else. It was exactly what we were looking for. But there was one big problem. There was no road. To reach our future home site, we needed to carve out a half-mile driveway through the trees, hills, and ravines. Before we could ever start building our house, we had to build the path that would get us there. We didn't have the equipment or the experience to take on something like that, so we hired a local grader who came in with his dozer. He started cutting into the hillside, peeling off the first 6 inches of topsoil to expose a solid base for the road. That rich topsoil didn't go to waste though. He pushed it down the hill toward the areas where we planned to install our 4 culverts. On paper it sounded simple, but this was February and the ground was just starting to thaw after one of the harshest winters we've ever seen. The dozer was working in soft, saturated soil, trying to move heavy, wet earth while keeping enough structure to build a stable roadbed.
Today is day 2 of grading. You know, when you're putting in a road in the wintertime, it's pretty rough when you get all these freeze and thaws and the ground gets really soft.
Every pass of that blade mattered. Every push of dirt had to be done carefully to make sure those culverts could handle what was coming later. A fully loaded dump truck and eventually an 80,000-pound concrete truck.
Well, we got some of our road in. That was an absolute disaster. The first load got dumped up top, and then the second driver came down and got stuck. Took about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for me to try and get him out of there. I think this is gonna be the hardest part about us building our house, just getting to it.
For days the mud was so deep you could barely walk through it. Days where snow would melt, then freeze again overnight, turning the road into sheets of ice by morning.
Well, we are quite a few days into this gravel road and we have some problems with it. 2 dump trucks kept getting stuck.
It tested every bit of our patience. What we thought might take a week ended up taking nearly a month. But little by little, we started to see progress. The base began to firm up, the ruts got shallower, and the path slowly came to life.
I can't tell you how good it feels to be on the top of this hill.
There's something incredibly rewarding about watching a raw piece of land transform, seeing a rough trail turn into the very road that would one day lead us home.
Guys, we are getting really close. I'm getting really excited because this project has taken, I don't even know, I haven't even counted the days, but probably a month and a half since we first started it, maybe even a little bit more because we had some pretty terrible weather.
By the time it was done, we'd spent countless hours walking that driveway, planning drainage, setting culverts, and watching every step of the process. I never imagined putting in a road would be so challenging, but it taught us a lot about patience, perseverance, and respect for the land. And when we finally drove up that finished road for the first time, knowing that every bit of it led to the dream we were about to build, it was worth every ounce of effort.
Well, we just got done with our 2,400-foot driveway, and we're not going to be starting on the house just yet. I think what we're going to be starting next is our garage. We've got some busy times ahead of us.
At this point in the build, the ground was still soaked from winter's thaw, and our new culverts were way too soft to handle the weight of a concrete truck. We couldn't pour a foundation, and there wasn't much we could do on the house site yet. But instead of sitting around waiting for the mud to dry, we decided to put that time to good use. We needed a place to store materials out of the weather anyway, so we figured, why not build the shop? It would give us shelter for tools, a dry spot for lumber, and a chance for me to sharpen my building skills before tackling the house. Now, I've built a few things before, a chicken coop, a small lean-to barn, even done some remodeling, but I had never built a full pole barn from the ground up. This would be a whole new challenge. We started by stripping away the sod and leveling out a pad where the building would sit. The first day, just seeing that flat ground made it feel like something was finally taking shape. We marked out our layout, measured carefully, and then set our 16-foot posts one by one, locking each one in place with concrete. It was slow, hard work, but there's something about seeing those posts standing that gives you this sense of pride. You start to see the bones of what's coming. From there, it was board after board, screw after screw, installing the girders and climbing higher with every row. Every piece of lumber felt like another lesson learned. Then came the trusses. 24 foot wide and heavy. We didn't have a lift or a crew or any experience setting something like that. The first few we managed to wrestle into place by hand, but it was exhausting. I remember standing there covered in sweat and dirt, realizing that there had to be a better way. So I decided to get creative. I rigged up a homemade boom arm for our tractor, nothing fancy, just made out of wood, and just a simple setup that could hook and lift each truss into place. And to my surprise, it worked better than I could have imagined. What would have taken two guys days of grueling work, we knocked out in a few hours. It was one of those moments where you realize, with a little ingenuity and stubbornness, you can figure just about anything out. When the frame was finally standing, I took a step back and looked at it. This big, solid structure that we built from nothing but a patch of grass and an idea. It was at that point the biggest project I'd ever taken on by myself. I like to think of that pole barn as my starter house. It wasn't just a shop, it was my classroom. That's where I learned how to square off a structure, how to frame a wall level and plumb, and how to stay patient through every small mistake. It taught me how to move slower, think ahead, and trust the process. And by the time that last screw went in, I realized something important. That barn wasn't just storage. It was the first real step toward the home and the life we were building here.
That is our second project that we've done on this new property. Now it is time for us to actually get started on our house, which is going to sit right here.
So there we were in April. After months of hard work, planning, and preparation, the time had finally come to start building our home. Every good home starts with a solid foundation, and this one was no exception. Ours would sit on an insulated slab-on-grade concrete foundation, a design meant to hold heat, stay efficient, and last for generations. We began by leveling the ground. Scoop after scoop, we started shaping the land into something that finally felt like ours. Every pass with that tractor, every shovel full of dirt, it was like we were carving our dream right out of the earth. Once the pad was level, we started setting our concrete forms. Board by board, brace by brace, we worked carefully, making sure everything was perfectly square and solid. I probably checked those measurements 100 times because I knew if this foundation was off, everything else would be too. I wanted it perfect. Next came the plumbing that would run beneath the slab, and that part made me nervous. This wasn't something you could fix later. Once the concrete was poured, those pipes were there for good. Every measurement, every slope, every fitting had to be exact. It was slow, meticulous work, but it forced me to be precise, and that precision carried into everything that came after.
We've got our two bathrooms. We've got this one right here, and then we got this one right here.
With the plumbing in place, it was time to prep the base. We brought in load after load of gravel, the more the better, and spread it evenly across the pad. I rigged up a simple but effective system using 2 string lines and a long screed board to level the gravel out flat. It worked beautifully, but I'll be honest, this was some of the hardest physical work I've ever done. Hour after hour, pushing and pulling that screed through the heavy gravel, it wore me out, but every inch mattered. After compacting the gravel with a plate compactor, we laid down a rigid foam insulation, which cost more than I'd like to admit, but I knew it was worth it.
Our slab is fully insulated.
That insulation would help store heat from the sun and keep our home warm through the coldest nights. On top of that went our vapor barrier, a thick plastic sheet to keep ground moisture from creeping up into the concrete. Then came the rebar. Concrete might look strong, but it's only as strong as the steel inside it. We laid out a tight grid of thick rebar, tying it all together to create a structure built to last a lifetime. Standing there, looking down at that web of steel and insulation, I realized how much was hidden beneath the surface of a good home. The kind of details most people never see, but that make all the difference.
It is early, and we are going to be pouring this concrete slab today. I'm really excited.
Finally, the big day came. The pour. I'd never poured a slab this size before, and I'll be honest, I didn't feel comfortable taking that one on by myself. Concrete work is expensive, time-sensitive, and unforgiving. You only get one chance at it to get it right. So we decided to hire a crew of local professionals who had the experience we didn't. They showed up early, trucks lined up, and ready to go. The sun was out, the air was hot, and we all knew time was against us. Once the concrete started flowing, there was no stopping. They began by pouring the thickened edges, the footing that would carry the weight of the walls, and then moved on to the main slab, working